Hi, I'm Alfonso Muchacho, and today I want to talk to you about groove and how your choice of sounds should always have the groove of your track in mind. I guess the term groove can mean many different things within music, but ultimately I think the term is the definition of that unquantifiable thing that makes people want to dance. There are some tracks that are beautifully arranged with complex melodies and impeccable production that simply aren't dance floor friendly. They sound great in your headphones late at night, but would really seem out of place on a dance floor at 3 a.m. Then there are those tracks that are seemingly just a kick and a bass line, but for some reason they just make everyone want to shake their booties. This is what I would briefly want to explore today. This is only a short video, and I'm a white guy from the southwest of England, so I wouldn't want to patronise you by trying to explain the intricacies and roots of funk. But we can have a look at a few techniques that will help you define the feel of your tracks through the use of percussion and bass. So, as ever, I've knocked together a quick loop to demonstrate just what in the blue hell I'm talking about. This track is at 120 BPM. The tempo does not change, but take a listen to the two parts that I'll play you now and notice how different the tempo feels. Okay, so remember that this is all at 120 BPM. Listen to that change in energy again. So the reason behind this is twofold. The first loop and the second are near identical in sounds. I've used the same synth bass and the same kick drum for both, but the first is one long continuous note held to make a drone. The second is this frantic rolling bass line that I've chained to the kick to create a pumping sound. The frantic second bass lines, with its transients popping rapidly out of the track, make it seem so much faster and full of energy than the first one. So this is something that you probably have to consider when you're building a track and you're searching for a bass line to marry with a kick drum. Not only do you have to get a sound that complements the kick drum, but you also need to keep in mind just how much energy you need in your bass line. Be wary about the amount of room it takes up in the frequency spectrum as well. If you have a huge bass line, you're probably going to have to compromise on the melodic content, so there's only so much you can fit into one track. Let's move over to the percussion and take a listen to them in solo. Okay, the first thing I notice here is in the seemingly slower loop, it's just got less going on in terms of hats and shakers. The clap is a lot louder than everything else, and if you think about what that's doing to the groove of the track, it's accentuating the beats, so your mind is really concentrating on the downbeat. If on the other hand you've got a lot more motion between the beats, as in our second loop, you're not hearing as much on the beat and more between them. This creates a rolling motion where there doesn't seem to be any spaces or pauses in the groove. It's a continuous sound and it makes the track feel a lot faster. So what can we learn from this? I think it's important to have these little nuances in the back of your mind when you're building a track because they can greatly alter the vibe of the track, sometimes without you even realizing it. If you listen to literally every techno track ever made, you'll hear 909 hi-hats dominating the mix, either the open sound or the ride. The ride sound in particular, being almost a splashing noise, makes the track feel like a runaway train moving towards you. So if you're going for speed, there's a lot worse you can do than reach for that 909 hi-hat sound. So that's how we imprint a sense of speed and pace on a track. But how do we get some backside shaking? Well, you could throw the contents of your wallet around, and I know I'd happily shake my thing for cash, but you might prefer to use a bit of swing on your percussion instead. Ableton Live has this wonderfully easy way to imprint a sense of groove onto your percussion. As you can see here, we can go into the groove pool and pick out a swing that will slightly offset the timing of our percussion. Let's take a listen. So I like to go for something subtle like this APC setting, but it's worth experimenting. Another tip or technique that I actually prefer is playing everything in by hand and then using Live's quantize function to quantize it by 50%. Let me show you. So here I've played in these claps by hand, and as you can hear I'm a bit off with the timing. So let's go into the quantize menu and set it to about 50%. As you can see, it's quantized my awful playing to the start of the grid by only 50%. This means that the timing's only half as bad. But in all seriousness, this helps create a groove that isn't 100% straight on the grid. If after quantizing by 50% it still isn't in time enough, you can just hit quantize again and correct it by another 50%. This is what I have as my default setting. If I need it 100% straight, I can just keep hitting quantize until it's dead on. So one more thing that I wanted to discuss was polyrhythms, the definition of which is a rhythm which makes use of two or more different rhythms simultaneously. The simplest way to achieve this is to fire up a sequencer, and in this case I'm using the BeatStep Pro from Arturia. So if you're a true music nerd, you'll know that I'm misusing the term polyrhythm here. What the BeatStep Pro is actually capable of is polymeters. Polymeters are when two or more musical phrases have a different number of beats within different bar lengths. A polyrhythm is the same in that it has a different number of beats, but it's all over the same bar length. So before you send me hate mail, I just wanted to explain the difference. Here I'm going to make a few patterns and adjust the bar length in real time. Listen as the percussion slips in and out of time, creating odd rhythms. Okay, so as you could hear, some of that worked and some of it didn't. It's best to use subtle noises that don't dominate the mix. Short, percussive hits like wood or bongo sounds are best. It's a lot of fun to experiment in this way, and you're far more likely to come up with something interesting than if you try to do this all deliberately. As ever, let me know down in the comments how you go about creating different rhythms and groove in your tracks.